Are there any sort of like unexplainable megalithic sites or artifacts that are found in Russia?
I'm glad you asked. Yes, but it's not what you think. It's actually, I think the biggest mystery in the eyes of Russians is St. Petersburg. The St. Petersburg in Russia, which is the city that is not that old if you believe the official history. So if you read the official history, it goes Peter the Great founded this city in the middle of a swamp where the Neva River, flows out of Lake Ladoga into the Gulf of Finland, like real low, swampy land. And he decided to build a new capital there. And the first question is, you find the worst possible spot. Congratulations. Everybody recognizes because ever since the city was built, it was suffering from annual floods of Neva River.
Right.
So stupid, And then, the Gulf of Finland, everybody knows it has so much fresh water in it to where arguably motivation of Peter the Great was he wanted to build a port city. But the Gulf of Finland is so bad to where it's a known fact that the cost of moving goods, let's say from Holland all the way to Gulf of Finland, let's say is 100 units. And then this remaining 2 miles, exactly also 100 units because it was shallow. The water was almost non-saline, so the wood rotted. So it's like the worst possible place, for commerce. But that aside, the bigger mystery is we have these palaces, just magnificent palaces in St. Petersburg and cathedrals that have a megalithic component to them. And once again, it's a topic that's widely discussed in Russian communities because it's close to our culture and probably not discussed here. But take, for example, St. Isaac's Cathedral. So if you open up a history book, it tells us that was built by, Italian architect. And that cathedral has columns that are, 100 feet tall. They're gigantic. Yes, they're huge. And they're telling us that, those columns were brought and quarried, and they have pictures. And when you look at those pictures, it makes no sense. There's no way, those columns were loaded on a barge, and not a chance in hell they were, transported and offloaded. And it's just the documentation that goes with it.
What year? What year, roughly?
200 years ago, ish, maybe 300. Yeah, about 200, 300 years ago. So it's not that long ago. And there is arguably documentation because the guy who built it, Montferrand, he put a journal where he documented it. And I build houses. I'm an engineer. I look at it, it looks odd. And then you also consider no roads. Russia was poor. And then you building these, huge multi-ton columns and bringing them over, it just doesn't make sense. But it goes further than that. Then all over St. Petersburg, which is, by the way, on the same longitude as Cairo. There is a lot of, Egyptian motifs. There are sphinxes and there is Egyptian-inspired architecture. There are these megalithic granite bathtubs that are exhibited at a hermitage, which, we have no idea how the hell they were carved and brought. And then I guess the funniest thing is, the Winter Palace or the Hermitage Museum now.
Yeah.
It's actually a 3-story building, but the first story is entirely underground. And if you walk around it, there will be a hole where you can see a portion of the window. And if you excavate it further, you see the columns and everything. It's not like, it's like the first floor is buried completely. Meaning how can you build 200 years ago and have your first floor be underground? And that's a pattern in every town in Russia.
Really?
Yes. The first floors are underground to where the entrances to the building are often on the second floor or in between the floors.
Underground, when you say underground, is there a basement? Can you go down there or is it?
Yeah, you can go down there. I mean,
okay.
it's such a
But
common...
it's like you're saying that there's like windows on the exterior.
Yeah, windows and all of the, decorative elements, and the first floor looks exactly like, the ground floor now, but except it's underground. So it clearly, was covered up. And when you talk to, let's say, a historian, they say, oh, it's, dirt. Like really, over 200 years, we have 6-7 feet of dirt. The street was never cleaned, because it's a pattern not only in St. Petersburg, it's in every like major city in Russia is like that. They do some construction work in a building that's only 200 years old. The first floor is underground, and it was all the windows and doors and steps and all of the
Buried.
Yeah, buried basically. And it's just, and people started noticing this, and they posting this, and they research St. Petersburg a lot. And once again, you cannot believe everything that people say on internet. So you don't know when people post something, it's authentic or not. But
I want to see, what is the explanation for the giant granite bathtubs?
yeah, I don't know. They say, well, some guys in Russia did it and they delivered it. But maybe more, I guess, incredulous is...
Are they precise, like granite?
They're very finely crafted. I don't know if anybody actually measured them to determine, precision or not. But I know there is a famous building in St. Petersburg that has, like this shit.
Holy moly. That's like 8 foot tall.
Yeah, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, what the hell is that?
And that's one piece of granite.
Well, by the looks of it.
Holy shit, dude.
Yeah, and so one study I know, there is like a famous building.
How much does that weigh?
Yeah, my guess is as good as yours.
That's insane. That's totally insane. How many of those are there?
I don't know. I mean, I've seen a couple. I've seen another one that has a foot in it, and it's smaller.
It's 48 tons.
Good God.
That's carved.
That's carved for sure.
The original block was supposed to be 160 tons before carving.
Yeah. So on that note, there is a famous monument in St. Petersburg, which is a monument to Peter the Great, and it's on the rock. And the
Thunderstone?
rock, yeah, Thunderstone. And the theory is it was brought from Karelia.
From Finland, right?
From Finland, basically, yeah. And when you look at it, it's just, I think I mentioned before, I don't believe that people were stupid and they were doing stupid work. So I think it's a stupid idea for a Tsar to say, hey, bring me a rock from God knows where to put here. It's stupid, however you look at it. And even, okay, if somebody was that stupid to give that stupid order, how would you do it when there are no roads, no infrastructure? Well,
they've documented how they moved that Thunderstone, right? Like Ben explained it to me, how they built this rail system with bearings, and then they also built these giant ships, giant rafts with warships on each side of them to move it. Oh yeah, there you go.
I think it's utter bullshit.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it just insults my intelligence. This whole story insults my intelligence. I mean, I believe that somebody could have created documentation to make it look plausible, but there is an example from the recent history. In the same town, it was called Leningrad during Soviet era. They wanted to erect a monument to the World War II, which was a granite obelisk. So it's a one piece of granite that they carved, I think, in Karelia, which is next to Finland, and they brought it on these huge trucks and erected on one of the squares, city squares. And it's well documented how it was done. And it basically goes like this. Several research institutions were working for, I think, a year or two on the logistics of it. How it would be carved, how it would be loaded, how it would be transported, which roads is possible to take, which roads are impossible to take, which bridges would hold, if it's transported over water, how it would be unloaded, and things of that nature. So it took 2 years of planning and a year to execute and bring that obelisk and erect it. And by the way, it was erected on a lead gasket, so the contact between the foundation and the obelisk is good, and it stays solidly in one place. So if it took like 2 years to plan a year, execute, given all of the modern technology, when we have roads, have cranes, have trucks and all of that, doing that with a rock, 300 years ago when none of that
What was
existed.
that thing, 1,000 tons? I think that thing was 1,000 tons. I think that they estimated that thing was the same size and weight as the unfinished obelisk of the pregnant woman in Egypt.
Yeah, besides it's stupid, why would you do it? I don't believe anybody's stupid. Besides, people need to be paid. How much money are you wasting on moving a rock?
Well, monumental type stuff was very important to these cultures.
Yeah, but people are rational. I don't believe in the idea that people are irrational.
Yeah, but what if the king, a king with a lot of money and a giant ego wants to show that his civilization is the best? He's going to get all the people.
Well, I know what happens when that happens.
What is that sound?
It's a motorcycle.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You know what happens? What you're describing takes place. Another king is looking at the king who's gone nuts, and he invades his country and takes over. Because, when you undertake a project like that, you pull in resources from everywhere, which means you don't have enough money or enough focus on maintaining military or, guard your borders, and people take advantage of it.
Sure.
This happens all the time.
Yeah.
So, it's just fundamental, and I could be wrong, I'm just expressing my personal
Sure.
opinion. I do believe fundamentally that people are rational and people are smart overall, as a, physical ensemble, as a quantum system. We're rational and smart overall. So I don't think, people do irrational things on that scale or stupid things for that matter, because everybody can count money. And that's why I think we underappreciate how smart ancient Egyptians were. And that's, one thing I learned in the course of my, vase project. I think my appreciation to the intellectual acumen of ancient Egyptians has increased tremendously.
Yeah, well, our society and our culture today, our values are probably way different than their values were back then. Our values now, at least in the Western world, are all based on economics, and acquiring wealth and notoriety and recognition for shit, and at the high level at least. And back then, I don't think that was it. I don't think that was it. I think maybe back then it was one of their top values was getting closer to the gods or something.
Maybe, but economics is still, you cannot take it out of the equation.
No,
because I think of this. Let's say pyramids were constructed by manual labor. Let's just say, go with the mainstream idea. Then, all of the workers need to be fed. Imagine, how much food you just need to produce just to feed this army of laborers. And how much strain would that put on the, agricultural, production that you need to feed an army of workers. And there is no way around it, because you cannot not feed your labor force. Because without energy, you cannot move anything. And that, goes about any project that involves like massive amount of people. You send an army somewhere, and with that army, you send like herds of sheep and cattle and logistics with the carts of wheat and barley and whatnot, right?
right.
So you have to have food to feed your labor force. And
Yeah.
if you don't, they cannot do any work.
Sure.
And, once you start accounting for that, a lot of projects just become prohibitively expensive, because we often think, those are just slaves. You beat the slave, he does the work. No, the slave cannot work unless you give him food, because without food, he doesn't have strength and energy.
Right.